Hi, everybody. Welcome to Skeptic Haven's Let's Talk for Sunday. And we're here every week at 5 o'clock Pacific, 8 o'clock Eastern, where we like to talk about different subjects. We've got usually a topic of the week. This week, we're going to talk about morality and God. Where does morality come from? And you're free to call in on that or on really any topic also that is of interest to you. This week, we've got a first time co-host who is really excited about doing this. I'm looking forward to this, and you'll learn on the other side of the music. So we'll see you there.
This is Skeptic Haven. Let's talk.
Welcome, Kelly, Godless Granny.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me on. I've been wanting to do this for some time.
Well, it's a fun thing to do, I think, and we get to talk to each other. We get to talk to the audience. So I forgot to mention before the music to remind everybody to while you're thinking right up front to like and subscribe to the channel and to obviously to the video. Our phone number, if you haven't called us before, is 984-789-4787 to call in. We also have a URL that you can see scrolling on the bottom of the screen, and we'll put that in the chat also. If you are calling internationally, we recommend that you do not use the phone or you will end up with a monster phone bill. So if you're calling from outside the United States, please use the URL to join in. And I guess that's enough to get us started. So how's your week been?
It's been pretty good. I put out a video responding to Sean McDowell and Greg Kokel this week, just discussing a moral issue, biblical slavery.
Oh, that's one of those topics that people never get enough of. So
Yeah. It's because the apologists just can't handle it. And no matter how they try, all they can do is say, well, biblical slavery isn't like American slavery. And the most interesting thing about this particular discussion is Sean was role playing a non-believer in the interview. And when he brought up slavery as an objection, Kokel asked him, well, how are you defining slavery? And Sean said, well, I define slavery as owning another person in any capacity. And Kokel tried his best to try to get Sean to change the definition because he didn't like the definition. Don't you mean American slavery? Don't you mean chattel slavery? No, I mean owning a person in any capacity.
Changing the definition, tried and true. What are you going to do? There's never an end to it. Morality seems to be a bit of a similar thing, I think, because people can well, I don't know. They have such a strong ingrained idea of what morality is and that it has to come from a deity. I am not at all convinced of that. So we'll talk about that. I guess we don't really hear the definition change too much, but just that absolute. What do you think? We've got a poll on it, but I want to get we'll start with your quick opinion on, and do you think any of human morality comes from deity or deities or God or anything like that?
My name should make that one obvious. No, I don't. I don't believe in any gods, so I don't think morality can come from a god, because if it did, those of us who have no gods would have no morality, and that simply is not the case. In fact, that's one of the points that had me scratching my head for a number of years before my deconversion, is that I have an aunt who is one of the most moral people I know, and she has always been an atheist. And I was, when I go to church, they keep telling us about how atheists are immoral people and they're always sinning and they're always doing bad things. But I know atheists that are not that way. Now, I also had an uncle who was an atheist who was an absolute ass. And he kind of was the epitome of what the preachers said about atheists. But she was not, and that gave me pause.
Well, I mean, some of us are asses, and anytime you put 10 people together, you're going to get some that are nicer than others and some that are more patient than others and whatever. So,
Exactly. And that's one of the arguments that I make to believers is people are people,
mhm,
and some people are better than others, and some people do more good things and some people do more bad things. But no
yeah,
matter what group you get, you're going to get a bell curve.
yeah.
And so what do you, I frequently ask believers, how do you see believers as being more moral than unbelievers? And I can't get them to point to anything in which their morality is better.
Yeah, I remember Dennis Prager giving this description of or this little story about you're walking down the street on a dark evening in a city or something, and where would you be more safe? For walking by a church with people coming out of it, or basically otherwise. And of course, he thinks it's a foregone conclusion that it would always be with church people, and I don't know. Maybe in that situation it would. It's because they've been like uplifted for the moment or something. But it's like the old story of as soon as they go to lunch after church kind of thing, they're yelling at the waitresses and they're famously bad tippers and things like this. So it just doesn't seem to follow. I'm going to bring up our poll and let's look at this right away. So the classic question is morality objective or subjective? And actually, why don't you give a definition before I do this? Why don't you give your definition of objective and subjective? I'll see if one
Oh,
matches.
that's a tough one because I have argued that morality is objective if you define
Well,
objective as
okay.
having an object or having a goal, because there is a goal to morality. But that is not the way most people define that's not what most people mean when they say that reality is objective.
Mhm,
I've seen Vice Rhino define it in saying that there is no object, that it
mhm.
comes absent an object, which would preclude morality from coming from God because God is a subject. And so if morality comes from a subject, God, then it is subjective. Um,
That's a really interesting point. That again is one of those things that just gets totally missed
mhm,
on the apologist side. For some reason, they give God a pass on the because he's a mind, right?
mhm.
Supposedly that he is somehow objective. It's like, well, no, you've just pretty much defined what subjective is. So the word that I use, the definition that I'm most familiar with is that something objectively true, for example, is true independent of anybody's opinions. So essentially,
Right.
in an environment where you have no minds or opinions around, this thing is going to be true or false. So as soon as you have a subject, like you said, then you have basically an opinion. So that's how I differ on them.
Yeah, the believer would say it's independent of any human mind, and they would define objective as being independent of any human mind.
Yeah.
But that puts an element into the word objective that I don't think you really can put into it.
Yeah, yeah, it is. That is another special pleading because it's like defining something, trying to define something into existence. It's
Mhm.
just like saying God is outside of time and space because these other things don't match. So we have to give him his own space, his own place, his own special case, right?
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
now, as people are listening out there, this is, like I say, this is always a conversation that goes on and has mixed opinions. So if you're differing with anything we say or you disagree and you have a good argument for it, please give us a call at 984-789-4787. And we're not, at least between Kelly and I, we're we're okay on philosophy, but we're not like big on heavy philosophy and heavy terminology and things like that. So I think we would prefer a more casual conversation about it. So, I mean, if you're going to do that to us, come on in. We'll let you in. We'll take you on, but still, we're gonna probably help or ask you to explain something so we don't double talk over not our audience but us. Okay, let me bring this poll up. So I brought this question up a little bit differently. Typically, it's just the straight up is morality objective, subjective. But I thought as I was writing that, I mean, I'm curious to what the answer is, and maybe I should have put that one too, but I did it this way just to see how people would react. Is it a combination? Unfortunately, the question does not get into specifics about what a combination would be, and there's all sorts of variations.
Right,
But,
right. And
but
even
even so,
it can be both subjective and combination in that it could be subjective, but a combination of different subjects. You know what I mean?
well, that's a different use of the word, though. Then,
Ah,
right?
okay.
That's like a So, what do you think of the balances here? We only have. I honestly I figured that objective would be low, but I didn't know how low. I actually didn't expect it to be this low. 4% is pretty low.
Mm-hmm.
And then as opposed to the 54 and the 42. What do you think about these numbers? Are you surprised by this? Is this about what
No,
you
I'm
would
not at
think?
all surprised by this because, if you had asked this in a place where half of the respondents were theists, then I would be shocked at this answer. But
Yeah.
because you put this out to an area that is predominantly atheist, yeah, I would expect this response.
Yeah.
The question
Well,
that I have a hard time answering is if something is morally repugnant, and use slavery as an example, has it always been morally wrong? And I would say yes. Even in ancient times, it was wrong. It was just that the people who lived then hadn't figured that
oops,
out.
sorry about that.
That's okay. Does that make it objective? Well, no, it doesn't, because it still comes from the minds of people. But it's
Mhm.
also not entirely subjective either, because it wasn't in the minds of the people of that day, and that's why they didn't get it. I'm not sure where to go with that.
I I think that's where most atheists go. Frankly, I know Matt Dillahunty and others who defend or argue against the slavery kind of go into that direction. I have a little bit of a different opinion, so I'm not sure if I stand alone on this or how many others. I would love to know as people are listening to this in the comments. Please say something to respond to this. I am I'm a little bit on the fence, but I am still probably 99 cents. That's what I'm worth. 99 cents. It's my 2 cents. It's my 99 cents opinion here. I'm still pretty strongly convinced that objective morality does not exist. It is not a thing. It is not a thing that exists in nature. It is not a thing that exists in physics. You only get morality when you have people to consider what is valuable. And by valuable in this case, I mean what is good or bad, what is proper, improper, correct, incorrect, right? That sort of thing. So I don't see. So that would mean that in all times there is no morality. Nature is amoral, right? Not immoral, but amoral. And that all cultures define their own morality. So now this immediately gets kicked down by most people as cultural relativism, moral relativism, right? And I'm okay with that. I've seen a lot of people back down from that position, that it's like as if it's a thing that can't exist, moral relativism. Well, does that mean that it was right to okay to murder and this and that time? And honestly, if it's a thing that your culture does, that's what your culture says your morality is. because without those minds and those cultural definitions, these things can be acceptable, right? We've had cultures that cannibalize. We can go further if because it does feel unnatural to say that the odd things like slavery could have been proper in different times. I think that's skirting the issue a bit. And I think the way to get around that is by looking at the potential victim of whatever condition we're talking about and asking their opinion, hypothetically asking their opinion. Do you want to be enslaved? Do you want to be killed? Would you rather not be? And then things come into pretty clear focus, and we can sort of we can define that as sort of pseudo objective, but I think we have to live with the reality that objective in the straight definition term is just not there. It's just chemistry.
One thing I think is even more telling for the theists, that morality comes from the minds of humans and not gods, is the morality of the R word. And I don't know if you want me to say that word out loud, because I know that YouTube doesn't like that word and it can get you limited monetization as a result.
What's the second letter?
A.
R-A.
And it's a 4-letter word.
It rhymes with tape.
Yes, it rhymes with tape. Yes, that's the one. And and that was one thing that I was just flabbergasted that Greg Kokel brought up as a point in favor of God, is that, look, the R word was punished by capital punishment only for a man that did it to a married woman. If a man did it to a single woman, the all he had to do was pay her bride price to her father, and then he had to marry her, and he couldn't divorce her. And the big thing that just blows my mind is that it was not a crime against the woman. It was a crime against the woman's owner. It was a crime against her father if she was single, and against her husband if she was married. There was no justice for women. And I'm going, how? And the big thing that I really think is so telling is that the laws that are in Leviticus with regards to this subject are very similar to the Code of Hammurabi, to the laws of the ancient Assyrians. And there's a third one I can't remember off the top of my head, but if you read Josh Bowen's Atheist Guide to the New Testament, Volume 2, he brings up this subject, and he puts out all the laws that were in place in the area. And the biblical laws look very similar to those of all the surrounding cultures. And I'm wondering, why is it that God is always in step with the current culture that he's supposedly ruling? Why is he never advanced? One of the laws on that topic is that if it occurs in the city and the woman doesn't cry out, you assume that the woman was complicit, and it was not our word, but rather adultery, and the woman is put to death too. How is it that this culture hadn't figured out that it is possible to silence someone through force or threat of force? They didn't figure this out for another, 300-400 years, and yet God couldn't figure this out either. Why is it that your God is never more morally advanced than the culture that's writing about him?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's a situation where it is cultural relativism right there. I mean, they're basically demonstrating through their book and through laws like that, the Old Testament laws especially, that it is relative to what they thought, and it's obviously what the men thought, what the dominant man in charge.
Right. Exactly.
But if all you need to do is take that little twist that I said about, if you ask the potential victim there what their opinion is, do you want to be taped? That's pretty good way around it. Have you read Sam Harris's book,
The Moral Landscape?
Yeah.
Yes.
What do you think about about his and about his opinion, and maybe you can
That
describe it for
was
the
that was
audience.
novel. His ideas were quite novel to me, and I'm on the fence on them
Well,
because I
tell
really
the audience what it is.
okay.
So let's bring
Sam
them in.
Harris's idea is that there is no free will, that we act entirely according to a combination of our inheritance genetically and our inheritance from our experiences. Now, I did go into a debate where I argued, that there is such a thing as free will. We do make choices. And my interlocutor asked, well, okay, if you go to the refrigerator and decide what you're going to have for breakfast, what shapes your decision? Well, the first thing that shapes my decision is what's in my refrigerator. And what's in my
Yeah.
refrigerator was determined by what I bought at the grocery store. And so my choice of what I have for breakfast is not entirely a free will choice. It was determined by what I chose to buy at the grocery store. It was determined by how hungry I am, which is a biological factor. It's determined by my food preferences. Um, and I did not determine my food preferences. I did not determine how hungry I am. And even though I feel like I determined what I bought at the grocery store, did I? Um, and no matter what choice I came up with, he would come up with something that could be a possible determiner or at least an influencer in that decision that was not something in my control.
Well, wait a second, because I mean that would I think you're thinking of a different book then, because I mean the free will concept. I'm not quite sure if
Well,
there's
his big
what the
argument
overlap is, but
is about the bear. He says, if a bear goes and mauls someone, we don't punish the bear because it's not the bear's responsibility that he went out and attacked someone. The bear was doing what the bear does because it is a bear. And so if a bear is mauling someone, we cage the bear. We don't punish the bear. And his point was that human behavior is very similar, that we do not act out of free will, that we act in accordance with our biology and our experiences. And therefore, what we do, the seeming choices that we make are not really choices. They are products of our conditioning.
my recollection of the moral landscape is that it was an attempt to make an argument for the objectivity of morality on a scientific basis. And what he suggested was that first you start with a definition of what was a source of what was good and bad. What do you mean by the words good and bad? And he used something, I don't have the exact phrase, but he used something like for the health and welfare kind of a thing.
Well-being, I believe, is what the words he used.
Well-being. Thank you. Yeah, you're right. Well-being. And then he said, if you think of any situation, you can find a similar situation, and that's just a little different. And always comparing those two, one is going to be better than the other. One's going to be more preferable, right?
Mhm.
One gives you more food than the other. One causes you more pain than the other. And you kind of generate this spectrum. Yes, talk about the moral landscape. That's correct. And that in itself is inarguably an objective thing, that once that something is better than something else. So you end up with this range that you can take to an extreme, and then work within that range. Now, and I think a lot of people's criticism of that was the first step that he took was first you have to define, what do we mean by good and bad? What do we mean by beneficial, non-beneficial? And I think that, again, not just me, that defining those up front that's the subjective step that you first have to go through. before that you can say that what comes after is objective. So I think that in the whole, there is no complete objectivity. Because first you have to take a subjective step. Does that sound familiar?
It does. I can also see why we focused on different portions of the book. Having had a law background, to me, the most significant thing of the book was the impact that it would have on the legal system if we were to adopt this ideology. Personally, I think our legal system is seriously flawed, because we are very focused on punishment as opposed to
Yeah,
rehabilitation.
I would agree.
And if we go with Sam Harris's idea that what we do is a product of our conditioning, then what we should be focusing on with prisoners is reconditioning them, changing their circumstances so that if they when they are released, that they will make different choices.
Yeah.
Now, some people you can never release. They simply cannot be rehabilitated.
Yeah, and there's in other countries they dominantly. Again, I don't know them, but it's the Northern European ones. I think Finland is one where they specifically work on rehabilitation, because you want to. It is not about punishment as much as it is about preventing it from happening again. You want to it's anytime you can't lock somebody away forever, or death penalty is now pretty much gone in many advanced countries, if not most, or if not all now. You really have to not pretend these people don't exist, and find a way for them to get back into society in a condition that they're not going to repeat whatever they did.
I really think that the reason that our justice system is so focused on punishment is because of the religiosity of our country.
Yeah.
The whole Christian way of thinking is that bad acts must be punished, and they must be punished harshly. And therefore, when we punish a criminal harshly for doing something bad, we are, even though we're not, specifically taking God's place, we're acting in a way that God would approve of. This is what our God would want us to do.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really poor mindset to have, that, this is a bad person, we need to punish them, instead of, this person has a problem. Can we help them with that problem? Can we bring this person to a point where they can have a good life?
Yeah. I want to switch. I'm going to go back.
Okay.
Because we went over it quick, and I want to go back to the beginning of Harris's basis. And if we are to try to figure out what is good behavior, what is bad, what is proper, what is socially acceptable, we have to define those words first, right? And I think it's helpful to think of what is in the animal kingdom as a precursor, because that kind of takes away some of the bias in terms of, it only comes from God. We essentially know that that's not true at this point. So how do you looking at the animal kingdom, you can look at something as simple as a lizard or a bird, or you can go into the primate or hominid arenas. What would be good in that? How do you think good and bad start?
I determine
humans.
I define good and bad by benefit and flourishing. And you could say that this is a circular definition. What is good, which is that which is beneficial. That which is beneficial is that which allows us to flourish. That which allows us to flourish is that which is good. And it is circular. But when you get to very basic things, your definitions are going to necessarily be that way, because that's the same thing with the Matt Walsh, what is a woman? Well, the reason that defining what is a woman is so difficult is because defining any very basic thing can be very difficult because
Mhm.
I don't know. I don't know the answer to why it is so difficult to define the most basic of things, but it is true. And I think defining what constitutes good is one of those things. However, I do think we really can do a cost benefit analysis to say, okay, if I do X, it causes this benefit to person A and this harm to person B. Does the harm to person B outweigh the benefit to person A? If the answer is yes, then obviously you don't do it. But if the benefit to person A is great and the harm to person B is minuscule, then we allow it. And I think that's what we have to do to determine what is good, is go through a cost benefit analysis.
Can we lose this circular argument by making a distinction between what is beneficial according to function, which is to say an evolutionary benefit? Because it is certainly beneficial to be healthier
Mhm.
than not healthy.
Mhm.
These things are going to let you reproduce more and have an evolutionary advantage that keeps your lineage alive and keeps preferentially to those that are less, right?
Mhm.
Could we separate those? It seems like there's a place to separate the evolutionary benefits to the value-based benefits. When people that are more interested in or like to be focused on what is proper behavior, it seems to be a different thing to me than beneficial to us at a survival level. And I wonder
True,
if that's
true.
a
I
way
mean,
we
is
could
it proper
separate.
to wear stockings?
Yeah.
Um, there was a time that not wearing stockings meant you were improperly dressed. And
So
is
where
there
does that?
anything?
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
There is nothing that is what's the opposite of beneficial? There's not detrimental. There's nothing detrimental about not wearing stockings.
Okay.
There's no evolutionary advantage to wearing stockings. Um, you
Okay.
could
Then that's a really good example. I just stop pointing.
Well, I went to that example because if you've ever seen, oh, I can't think of his name, the guy that made Beetlejuice,
Oh,
his version of
yeah,
Alice
the
in
director.
Wonderland. What would you say?
The director, yeah,
Yeah,
it's
I can't think of
escaping
his
me
name.
too.
Somebody
Tim
somebody
Burton.
in the chat. Tim
Tim
Burton,
Burton.
thank me.
Yeah.
Tim Burton's Alice in Wonderland. At the very beginning of the movie, Alice is being brought to a castle or a fancy house, and it's supposed to be Alice's engagement, but it's a surprise and she doesn't know about it, and she's not wearing any stockings. And her guardian is chastising her for not wearing stockings, and she said, "What if wearing a codfish on your head was considered proper, and not having a codfish on your head was considered improper? Would I
Mhm.
be improperly dressed because I don't have a codfish on my head?" Yeah.
That's good. So my question then becomes, what makes that?
Proper,
How do we get to that definition of what is proper then?
proper. Mhm.
And who defines what is proper? So now we've got this distinction between the evolutionary and the not related to evolutionary.
Mhm.
So we can focus on that. So how does proper get defined?
I don't think proper is necessarily good because there are times that we have defined things as being proper that would fail the definition of things that are good. Take ladies' corsets.
Hmm.
Wearing a corset was proper for a lady, but it was not good for her. It was not healthy. Um,
But they would consider that, yeah, immoral in the sense that they were showing leg or whatever, you know, wouldn't they? So wouldn't that make it an immoral
well, a
thing?
corset doesn't go on your legs, it goes on your chest.
Oh, sorry.
It 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 it's it
Missing the
it
words. Yeah.
it was supposed to tighten it. You pull it real tight to make a woman's waist look smaller.
Yeah.
But it makes it difficult for the woman to breathe. It makes it difficult for her to eat. It makes it difficult for her to move. It was not healthy to wear a corset. And the corsets had whalebone in them to keep them tight. Um, and you wore these underneath your clothing. It had nothing to do with modesty whatsoever. It had everything to do with, Kat the humanist is right. It made a lot of people faint, and that's why you had the
Yeah.
stories about the fainting women. They're fainting because their corsets are too tight.
Yeah.
But that was the proper thing to do, was to wear a corset. But it was not a good thing for women from our perspective today. Now, from the perspective of the people who made the rules that this was proper, they would have said it was a good thing because it made the women look better. Made the men happy because the women looked better.
So I think you're demonstrating that it is a societal definition then,
Yes.
which
Yes.
can be, which is basically a different thing than good. If we ask the woman, do you like to wear this? I mean, some might say, well, I like to look good for the men, and that could be an
Right.
advantage or an argument that they can take, just like
Most
some
of them will
women
say, I
will
do it because
like.
I'm trying to get a husband, and this is my best way of getting a
Yeah.
husband. Right.
And others can say that I hate it because I can't breathe. Right. So, we have a call. Good. Let's let
good.
that get screened. So let's see. What was I gonna say? So I do
Yes,
think
there's
we
no
can make
question
that.
what is proper is determined by society.
Yeah, I do think we can make that distinction, and I think that does help. And personally, I think that we, again, it's not whoa, there's a lot of text just came up over there. That's a different thing.
Kai-Fi says now women wear girdles. No, they don't. They wear Spanx. Girdles went out about a decade ago.
Thank you, the inventor of nylon and spandex. Anyways, I'm losing my train of thought. I'm going to jump to real quick a side subject. We are here on July, what's today, 9th? Today's the 9th?
Yes.
2023. There's a new thing going on called Threads. There's a new Twitter competitor that just popped up this weekend, and it's I'm not going to take sides on Twitter versus Threads, but it is becoming a social media site that has a major audience, so we are going to be on it. So I'm bringing this up, and I would like to everybody to snapshot this screen real quick and join us over there. We are at 1,700 followers, and since it's the first weekend, I'd love to give us just a good out of the gate following of a couple thousand would be terrific. So just to give a little information about what it is, if you're in Instagram, you can start it up from your Instagram account, and it will basically invite everybody that you're already connected to on Instagram, which is terrific because it helps you not have to start from square one. So
I'm laughing at the comment from James Apperson. Adding that to my pickup lines. Hi, do you like Spanx?
Do you like Spanx? We lost our caller. There's a story there.
Too bad.
Yeah, feel free to bring those up, by the way. Or no, you can't bring them up. You can't see them,
no.
Can you? Okay. It says my eyesight is a little tougher, so I'm usually missing those. I do like Spanx. Maybe they should be asking you, James. Spanx are a form of deception. Okay, you guys have it out. Go ahead. Anyways, so please give us a follow on, or is it follow or like? It's follow on Threads, the new place. I know not everybody needs to be on every site. I understand. So do as you will, go as you choose. Facebook, Instagram, Threads, Twitter. We are on all these sites, and we will continue to be on all these sites. So
I mispronounced the name. It's James a person.
A person? Is it really?
That's
I
what
always thought it was
YouTube Punk says.
Apperson.
YouTube Punk says that I've mispronounced it.
James. Okay. Cyberpunk. Okay. Well, we'll let them have that out in the side chat. And oh my gosh, look what just popped in. Bree has given us a $10 super chat. Only the idle rich never did that. They didn't work. Working women love their stays / corsets. They provided back support as they did their backbreaking work. Working women were the last to stitch bras.
To switch to bras.
See, eyesight. By the way, I'm going to have cataract surgery in like a week, so things will get better.
Okay,
soon.
I've had cataract surgery. Of all the surgeries I have ever had, cataract surgery is by far the easiest. It is
my favorite.
It is such an easy surgery to go through that they send you home right after the surgery, and then you have to come back for your follow-up with the doctor a couple hours later.
Yeah, I had this eye done like 10 years ago, and you're right. It's nothing. It sounds, well, before I just say that, I just breathe. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for supporting us. This makes a big difference. Yeah, it was, and I won't dwell on this. It's a weird thing to think of because they're going to go into your eye, but you have no senses in your eyes. And plus they give you some juice anyways. So it's just like you go home and you get eye drops and you take it easy for a couple of days. You don't do any off-roading. You don't do any bouncing. You don't do any heavy lifting, no watermelon spitting contests, no dust throwing at each other contests. And then 2 weeks later, you're fine.
The coolest part for me is I no longer need glasses to see distance because they put lenses in my eyes when they did the cataract surgery. So now I only need reading glasses.
That's what they told me they're going to do. I tell my wife I was kidding. I want the Borg laser. How much does it cost to get the Borg laser put in? As long as you're in there. So I want the green Borg laser. That would be cool. Okay. I think we may have kind of put that one to bed. Any other comments you want to make on morality before we kind of move on to something different?
No, that sounds good that we could move on.
Sounds like a good start. I'd love to talk about this more if we have a caller, so please give us a call. I know we're still trying to get the word out there. Where's my phone number again? I've got my screen. Can you read the phone number off the top? My screen scrolled up. I can't see it right now.
984-789-4787.
4787. Another caller coming in, but we're going to let that get screened. And I'm going to jump to
let's keep the comments real quick so that you can get to the caller just as soon as they finish screening so we don't end up losing the caller again.
Well, sometimes the callers are not allowed to come in, so I will leave that. Okay. I will leave that up to the screener to make that call. So I'm not going to.
Well, I was just talking about as soon as the screener is done. That's all.
As soon as I can see it. It's right. That's why I keep looking to the side because it's right on my side there. So we can come right back to this anyways. So let's grab this one. This is these are questions from Facebook from non-theists typically. Or from theists to non-theists. So we can kind of use this as a caller. How does an atheist make a decision between right and wrong? How would you answer that?
I would say the same way that a believer does. We look at what are the consequences of the act. Is it good for, whoever is going to be affected by what we do? And if the answer is no one's going to be affected by me and it will give me pleasure, then obviously I'm going to do it. And if the answer is, well, it'll give me pleasure, but it's going to harm somebody else, then I'm not going to do it.
I usually start with the golden rule, do unto others as you would have done to you. You can go further than that, and I forget what they call it, the silver platinum rule or something. It's like, what do you think the other person would want done? What would be the preferred action to that? So because those two may differ, which trails back to what I had said before. Do you want to be a slave? Do you want to have your stuff stolen, or would you rather that I don't? I think it's fairly easy. I think we have somewhat of an inherent sense of what's right and wrong. Some of that comes from evolution in terms of what was beneficial and what kept us in our tribes, right? That wasn't that we didn't take on punishment for our tribes for doing this or that. So I don't think it's that difficult a question to answer. Okay, I'm going to bring in a call. This is Emmanuel. Welcome to Let's Talk.
How are you guys?
Hi. How do you pronounce your name? Because it starts with an A. So how do you pronounce your name? Emmanuel. Okay. So you're from Texas. Christianity is the only true religion in the world. So give us your argument for that. Why do you think that's true?
Well, first of all, I think there's a sociological influence that you have as a person of like depending where you live or depending how you grow up, that you pick out a certain faith. I do acknowledge that we could pick religion or faith correctly or incorrectly out of the popularity of the people that are surrounding us. But I think if we look at scripture, I think the God of scripture claims exclusivity from all the other gods. Especially in the New Testament, Christ says that I am the only way to the Father. That's why I think Christianity is the only true religion.
Well, it's the only. Actually, I'm going to say one thing, and then Kelly, I want you to take this because this is your first time in this show. So, on a show like this, I would like you to have the opportunity. You do realize that Christianity is. Well, I want to ask you: do you realize that Christianity may be the true one that you believe in because it's the one you grew up with, as opposed to having been born someplace else?
Well, I don't agree with that because the denomination that I grew up in and the faith that I'm in right now is really different in terms of culture. I had parents who were Mennonites. I'm not a Mennonite, so I don't think necessarily just because you grew up in a certain faith doesn't mean you die with that faith. There are plenty of people who grew up with Christian parents who end up as an atheist.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Kelly. Take it from there. Let's see how you can do with this.
I don't accept that the God of the Bible ever claimed to be God. And the reason I say that is because, first, God never wrote any of the Bible. And I assume that you're going to point to places in the Gospels where Jesus allegedly claimed to be God, but Jesus never wrote any of that, nor did anyone who met Jesus write any of that. So why would you think that anything that's written in the Bible is an accurate depiction of what Jesus may or may not have said?
It's because I look, whenever I'm investing my time and whenever I'm investing my money or my life, I want to make sure that what is the risk of this and what could be.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that.
Okay, let me say it again. Can I say it again? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Please do.
So whenever I try to invest my money or time or anything in my life, I want to know what is the risk if I don't do this, and what is the possible evidence, the possible benefit I could get out of this. So let's say I don't believe in the Christian or the biblical God, and I just live my life not believing in the gospel, and I die, and there's a possible judgment that will wait for me. So I have basically lived for myself. After that, there's a possibility where I could lose my entire eternity in the lake of fire. So why isn't it better to believe something and be wrong than to not believe in something than to be wrong? Because I have nothing to lose as a Christian, right?
Okay. You're basically making Pascal's wager. Have you ever heard of Pascal's wager?
Absolutely. I've
Okay.
actually studied those concepts.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, suppose there really is a God. And when you die, you're going to meet this God. But there are thousands. There are literally thousands of gods. What makes you think that when you die and you meet this God, that the God you meet is going to be the one that you believe in?
Uh, as I've said, like I don't know all the other doctrines, so you can't be scared of the things that you're not aware of. So all the other, religions like Judaism, Islam, or Hinduism or whatever, I've never studied those doctrines. I try to stay away from them. I only know the Christian doctrine very well, and I've studied the New Testament. I've studied the Bible cover to cover. So the only thing that I know is the Apostles' doctrine. So I don't really get bothered whether I'm not wrong about all the other stuff.
Okay. In your religion, if you never hear about Jesus and you never hear about the Christian God and you die, do you get to go to heaven?
Well, it's upon the election of God. So if that scenario actually happened, it means that you are never predestined to know Christ, and God has made a certain people to be saved in heaven, and God created a certain people to be damned in hell, according to Romans 9. It talks about how the potter makes a clay, and the clay could be for glory or dishonor. So you are never predestined in that scenario. So
You've
that's how.
completely contradicted yourself. In the beginning, you said that based on the evidence that you choose to believe in the Christian God because of what benefit you can get by having that belief. And now you say that whether or not you believe is a matter of predestination. And if a person is predestined, then they will believe. If that's the case, then Pascal's wager is meaningless because there is no wager to make. Those who were predestined will believe, those who were not predestined will not believe, and nobody has a choice in the matter. How can Pascal's wager even enter into the picture?
So even the choice that I make,
You
I
just said
believe
you
that.
had no choice, that you were predestined.
Well, I think free will and choice is different. So I don't believe in free will. I believe in choice. Right. So what I
That's
think is
no, wait. That's kind of semantics.
okay.
If you have free will, you're making a choice, right? I mean, that seems fairly simple, right?
Okay. Let's say you have a choice, and what I believe is for us to make that choice, God has to harden our heart or soften our heart so that we could make the choice that He had predestined in the first place. That's why you see God hardening Pharaoh's heart in the Old Testament, and God softening hearts, but people's heart in the New Testament. So what I think is,
Wait. God will.
I might think, okay,
You've got like there's about 5 topics in here, so I'm like
God
drooling at
will
this.
harden your heart
But yeah, that's an
so
odd
that
one.
you
Yeah,
don't pick him. Is that what you're saying? That God hardens the hearts of unbelievers so they don't pick him?
God basically gives you out for a reprobate mind, right? 1 Corinthians 4:4 says that the God of the world has blinded their eyes so that they don't come to the gospel, right? So what I
Okay.
think
So
is
then
when
there
you
is no
become
choice.
unbeliever,
God's making all the
there is no
choices and
choice
we have
then.
no choices.
no, I don't believe that we could uh, choose our like we don't have like a basically free will, or we're not like autonomous or anything like that.
Now you've
It's
completely
God.
contradicted yourself again. A minute ago, you said we do have
Yeah.
free will.
No, what I'm saying is the choice that we will make, God is the one that gives that. Like if I want to go to LA or if I want to go to Texas, it is God that is giving me the idea in the first place. So even the
Ah,
choice is not my
So
thought.
God controls
And I
your
think that
thoughts. God
yeah,
controls your thoughts? Okay. And he tells you what to
of course,
think.
why? Why
God
do you
and
think? Why
or
do
manipulate.
why do you think that your thoughts are not your thoughts and they are God's? God putting thoughts into your head. Why do you believe that? Why does that make sense to you?
Uh, I don't want to I don't want to make a circular argument. I know that you guys don't believe in scripture, but I have to go back to scripture because there are um
Well,
time and
hold
time
on, hold
where
on, because you don't. We're trying to We're trying just to understand you. So if you pull from scripture, you're just going to be making assertions. So help us understand why you think when you have a thought that it is coming from God and it's just not a thought in your own head,
um
regardless of the topic.
uh, because there are different situations for me to make that decision. So that's why we can make an accurate decision. So
Do you
we
think
can't
you're not capable of making a good decision on your own? Any good decision?
oh, not
Say
any
again?
good decision, but not a good decision that could lead me to salvation.
Okay. Do you think that people who are unbelievers because God made them unbelievers?
Yeah, the reason you and I might disagree, I don't know. Like in the future, you might be a Christian. I don't know. That's
Mhm.
upon the definition of God.
But
But
those people
uh,
who die and are still unbelievers at death, they are so because that's what God wanted them to be, correct?
God gave them to a reprobate mind, right?
Well, you
God
said
chose
that
a
if they want
reprobate
to
mind.
believe, they can only believe if God chooses to wake them up, if God chooses to call them. So if God chooses not to call them, then isn't their unbelief God's choice and not their choice?
That's where I will land on, and I think that is more valid argument for the New Testament.
Okay, and
That
the Bible also tells you that the chosen are few. Many are, that few are chosen, correct?
yeah,
Okay. So why does God make so many people that he has predestined to hell and only a few people that he predestines to eternity in heaven?
well, I think is God chose the way of the foolishness of the world. So a lot of people think they have boasted and they have become prideful of
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
the
I don't know if you
knowledge
misspoke or not. God chose the way of what is
The
bad.
foolish
foolishness of the world, right?
Why would God choose you to
to make
have the
people
foolish
foolish. Yeah.
choices?
Because if he chose the thing that we consider smart or intelligent, a lot of people will come to him, right? So in order for the few to come and in order to make the gates of heaven very few, he has to choose the foolishness of the world so that
So he has to make
only
lots
few
of foolish
might
people just so a few people can go to heaven. That sounds like a horrible God. You still there?
yeah,
Here,
I'm still here. I'm just
you're thinking. You're thinking, and that's fine.
okay, okay.
So Emmanuel, why would a God have to? I mean, the typical argument here is that God gave us free will to choose, right? Choose him or not
No,
choose
he
him.
did not give us. He
And
did not get. We don't have to. We don't have. We're not autonomous. We don't have a free will.
Okay.
oh no, you're arguing against free will.
Yeah, he's doing the Calvinist position, which I'm quite familiar with.
Okay.
Um, But again, if it's entirely in God's prerogative, why is God creating so much fodder for his furnace and only a few that he's going to love and cherish and take to heaven with him? That makes no sense if you claim that your God is a loving God.
Well, when you say he's a loving God, he's only loving to the elect and the ones who come to Christ, right? So,
Right. He's only loving to the ones he wants to love, and he's hateful to the vast majority that he never loved, and he always knew he was going to hate even before they even existed.
well, what I think is, good and evil, and destruction and construction is created by God, right? So I do believe that there is an evil, there's evil present in his throne. He is the creator of light and darkness, good and evil. So I do not believe that he is totally benevolent to everybody else. You have to come to Christ, otherwise you will be children of wrath, rather, and you are going to die with sins.
That sounds rather abusive.
Doesn't Romans 9 say, but before they were born, before they had done anything good or bad, that God loved Jacob and hated Esau? That God's
Yeah, so you just
choice was made
demonstrated my
before they're
point.
even born?
So you just demonstrated my point again, which means my doctrine is more reliant on Scripture. You're quoting verses that I have done my argument with.
Right.
So you're supporting me.
I am supporting that if your position is that God chose to predestine some people to heaven and others to hell, and he did so according to Romans even before they existed, before they did anything good or bad, then the determination of whether a person goes to heaven or hell has nothing to do with their choices. It has nothing to do with their actions. It is only the choice of God and God alone, correct?
Yeah. So God
Okay.
alone save you.
So
It's
why
not.
would a good God make people that he intends to throw into a furnace to torture for eternity?
I don't really know that. It's just like those things are kind of like a mystery to me, and they're very
Okay.
perplexing because there's not a clear scripture that we see that why is God doing this and why is God doing that. It's just God is going to do this eventually kind of explanation that we have from scripture.
Doesn't
So
this imply that that your God is not all good?
I think his benevolence is only to the chosen one, not to everybody else. Or if I could say that, it's not omni, it's just benevolent.
Well, then your God isn't love. Your God is
Yeah.
selectively. Doesn't your Bible also say God does not
Yeah.
show favoritism? That's also in Romans.
Well, he
That's
did
in
not.
Romans 5.
He did. I don't believe that he chooses favoritism, like because salvation is available to Jews and Gentiles, bond servants, and free persons, males and females. So I don't think there's, when it says that he doesn't have favoritism, it means that he picked everyone from every demographic. It doesn't necessarily mean that everyone gets to get to his kingdom. It just means that he have chosen people from the entire world. That's what it means that he loves the world. It doesn't mean that everyone who's born and created by him, he loves them. It just means that he has elected few people from every part of the world.
So God created humanity purposely to love some and either hate or ignore or use as fodder others purposely.
He doesn't even know them, right? Because
He doesn't
in
know them. If you're
Mhm.
arguing he created them, and something else occurs to me here too, Emmanuel. If God did all this stuff on purpose, why did he have to start over at Noah's flood and wipe out everybody but 8 people on a boat? How does that make sense in the
Oh,
story that you're giving us?
yeah. I think, like, can you just give me like more clearer question? Like, why does
Okay.
he
So I think it's
mean,
what I'm
like,
saying is it's inconsistent. Give me one sec. I'm sorry. We got a super chat. I just want to throw it up because it's been up for a while. Pascal's wager is the weakest argument. I agree, friend. I'd love to talk about Pascal's wager, but there's so many other topics here, so we're sticking with this one. We'll see if we can get to it at the end of the call. If you're saying that God has purposely created some people to save and other people not to save, done this on purpose, and that God is all knowing and all intelligent. We know he's not all benevolent because of your what you just said. So he's not all good. But if he did all this stuff intentionally and can't make mistakes, why? That's inconsistent with his deciding to kill everybody in a global flood, isn't it?
well, all the people that were living in that time, their hearts were wicked, right? So he regrets.
God
All
didn't
the
choose
people-
any of them.
But I don't agree with that. But God created them.
Yes, right?
So at one point he created evil people in the ratio of 8 to like 2-3 million or something like that. Can we agree that that's at the very least a very, very, very inefficient God? Do you see my point?
Well, we can't blame it. Well, we can't blame our sins on him, right? So who are we to judge a righteous God?
Emmanuel, you just did blame them on him. You just said that he chooses who's good and who's bad, which is to say he chooses who's going to do good, right? And who's going to do bad.
No, it's not because they do good or bad. It's just he chose some people in Christ before the foundation of the world so that they don't inherit the kingdom of God by their merit. So it's not the matter of doing good things. If you say that he created them to do good things, you're going to create a work-based salvation, right?
Yeah, I'm seeing the inconsistency, and I'm kind of surprised that you're not. So I'm not quite sure how to get this point through to you.
The inconsistency, and maybe I could clarify the possible that I can do.
So you said that, and correct me if I get any of this wrong. You said that God created people just in general, and he created them intentionally so that some would be selected and some would not be selected to be with him eventually, right? So far?
Okay, yeah.
Now, did this good side versus bad side, is it based on, well, you said it's not based on free will, so you're saying it's based on his decision. So it's not based on anything that they say or do or think. It's based on his choice. And at one point in early history, you suggesting that he either changed his mind about how many good ones versus bad ones he made, or he just made a mistake and decided to scrap the board and start over. This is a very odd, amoral God, if you will. That's why I say at the very least it's inefficiently or incompetent in terms of good management or good planning.
Well,
and it sounds confusing, I think, because it is an inconsistency, and that's really what I'm trying to point out to you. It's an inconsistency in the behavior. So you're convinced that God acts along that particular way, making good people and bad people, and then he does this very big historic thing where he acts an entirely different way. So it's a very strong inconsistency in the story of this character's psychology.
Didn't he know before he created them, even before he did the flood according to the story? Didn't he know, which means that he basically predestined them to be in that situation in the first place?
Can I ask
Well, that's
you?
what you're arguing. Go ahead, Kelly.
Okay.
That's what you're arguing.
I'd like to take this in a slightly different direction. Emmanuel, do you have any children?
No,
No.
unfortunately,
Okay.
I'm not married. I don't
Okay. Do you have any brothers and sisters?
I don't have brothers. I have sisters.
Okay, you have sisters. Okay. Do you have more than one?
Two.
Two. Okay. So, since most people are unbelievers and most people are not chosen by God, the odds are that at least one of your sisters was not chosen by God to be saved. And if you have children in the future, suppose you have 3 children, the odds are that God will not choose to save all of your children. Are you good with God sending your child or your sister to hell to be tortured for eternity because that was his choice?
Well, my sisters are Christians, so I don't think that it could be predestined for hell. They believe in the gospel.
Aren't there
Uh,
some people that say, Lord, Lord, but God says he never knew them?
Okay, so when he said that, I think what he's talking about is they thought that they could be saved by their own work. So they came to the master and they said that we have casted out devils, we have prophesied, we have done this. So there are a lot of people that think that they could gain salvation by their work. That's what they did, and Jesus said that I never knew you
Okay.
because they
Well,
have
how do you
not
know your sisters are really
fulfilled the will.
saved? How do you know God chose them?
Well, I never really, we've never really, talked this much about
Mhm.
what they actually believe.
Mhm.
So I know that, by the way, I'm not American, so it might be a little bit different, Christianity that we grew up with.
Mhm.
Uh, so what I think is anyone who calls upon like the name of the Lord or who believes in Jesus Christ, death and resurrection is sufficient for the forgiveness of our sin, which is worthy of death. If you believe in that specific thing, if you rely on Christ, there's no possibility that you'll not inherit the eternal life. So when they said that, when he said that you've never done the will of my Father, the will of the Father is to believe in the Son in other scriptures. So what they were doing was, we have done this and that, and you are supposed to know us. So a lot of people misinterpret Matthew 7 when Matthew 7 is clearly saying that we can't inherit eternal life by our work or the things that we do.
Okay, but I thought you said salvation was based on what God chooses and whom God calls, not who believes in him or who does anything for God. It's not what you believe, it's whether or not God chose you.
So if he chose you, he's going to give you faith. So we were predestined by God. That's why we have faith. Some people
Emmanuel, I was a believer for 42 years and I had faith.
well,
And now I'm an unbeliever.
I mean, okay, like I don't specifically know what denomination you was in. I don't know what doctrine you believe. So I'm not.
What difference does it make? It's God's choice. It's not my choice. What difference would it make what I believe?
Don't believe that. Well, I don't believe that you could lose your salvation. So,
you don't believe that there has ever been a Christian who's become an atheist? Of course there have.
There are, but if they become an atheist, that means that they were not saved in the first place. They were a Christian, but they were not saved in the first place. They might be.
You're not saved.
So you've just created that's a fallacy. Well, it's like
Okay.
like by definition, if you go to the other side, you never were with us in the first place, is what you're saying.
Right.
Yeah. Well, again, that's a very odd God to make people do that. I want to switch directions a little bit. Stay with us for a second, Emmanuel. We're going to talk to you a little bit longer because I don't have another caller, but I do, because we've had you for a bit, I do want to encourage other people to call. So please give us a call at 984-789-4787. You can also use the URL. And real quick, we've got a couple super chats. I'm going to do this real quick while we can. And then we'll continue on. So Calissa789 says, for your patience, $5. Thank you. I mean, like I said, I was writing notes because there's about 5 different topics roads I can take him down. And I'll take him back, Emmanuel, I'll take you back to the first topic because we really didn't cover it. But this, I enjoy this. I think this is what we should be doing more of. At least not every show does this, and I would like to be able to have these more polite conversations. So I do appreciate you, Emmanuel, as we're having this. And this other one from Ferd Love Band, $5 of the 8 billion humans on the planet, Christians make up 2 billion of them. How many is Emmanuel's God choosing? That's an interesting question. Emmanuel, can you answer that from our how many of these 2 billion Christians in the world is your God choosing? Obviously, I'm not looking for an exact number. I'm looking for some inkling that you have and why you're going to give us whatever number you give us, percentage or something.
I don't know the exact number, how many people will end up as a Christian.
She says she's talking about just the Christians on the planet now. We don't know the number. I understand, but just give me your intuition about what percentage of these 2 billion existing Christians God would choose.
Well, the answer is I'm not really sure, or I don't know how many people he has chosen.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. I don't know is a valid answer. I'm going to try to twist that back to your original question, because you said that you were making an assertion that Christianity is the only true religion in the world, and I started to challenge you on that initially, and I want to retrace that. Christianity is currently a minority religion in the world. We know that now. I mean, just the stat, just by going by, for instance, stat right here. I don't know the stats offhand, but there are 2 billion Christians in the world and roughly 11 billion people in the world.
8.
What was I thinking? 11. Okay. Well, it's a minority, 25%. If it's 8 billion, then yeah, it's true. By Fern's definition right there, it's 25%. So right off the bat, you're going to, it is, and I know this for sure from studies, that the closest denominator or common element for what religion you are is the location of the world that you were born in. So you're Christian most likely because you were raised in a certain area of the world, be it U.S., be it out of the U.S., whatever. You were raised into a Christian society or a portion of the society. So, so when you say that Christianity is the only true religion in the world, why is Christianity and Islam isn't, or Buddhism isn't, or Hinduism isn't, or Jainism isn't?
Well, I came to the United States very recently. It's just been very recently. So I grew up and I was born in Ethiopia. So Islam was half of our population at that time.
Okay.
So I have to correct you on that I was just surrounded only by Christians. Islam has much influenced the area that I grew up with. So,
okay. Well, I mean, statistics are statistics. So, and there are going to be exceptions to every rule. But again, just on the simpler concept that there are more people. I don't care which religion you pick. Pick any of those, because they all claim that they're the correct one, right? So why would any of them, how can any of them justify the idea that theirs is the best versus the other
Uh,
3/4 of the world that don't practice their religion?
well, so some of the other religions, they don't claim exclusivity, but some do, but some don't. Some say that there are also other ways that you can find the truth. Um, for example, I know that Buddhism doesn't claim exclusivity. I know that Zoroastrianism doesn't claim exclusivity.
Well, then
Uh,
let's stick with the major numbers then, because the major numbers are Christianity, Islam, and Hinduism. And Hinduism, I'm a little less familiar with, but you might be right, Kelly. You can correct
Yeah,
me.
no, because Hinduism actually has many gods.
Polytheists. Okay.
Mhm.
So,
But
and
Muslims definitely claim that they are the one true religion. If you
yeah,
don't worship Allah, you are going to hell.
yeah. And Muslims are at least the size of Christianity right now. I know they're going to surpass them
Mhm.
in the next couple of decades. So, tell me why you think Christianity is the one true when it is a minority belief, and regardless
well,
of how you grew up.
just if I could just be biased, it would just be that I think it's kind of like a fairy tale. I don't think they have like the way that I see all the other faiths. Is I think they're just like basically ancient mythology. I don't think they have truth in them. I mean, they might have truth,
Okay.
but I don't think that they have it all. Uh,
Well, that's fair. So you
and
can you recognize it that there are mythologies around,
yeah,
and
people
you reckon
for
and I'm sorry. Go ahead.
people have been worshiping Thor and Zeus and a lot
Yeah.
of different, you know.
Have you ever studied how similar the claims of Jesus are to the claims of Romulus and Remus?
There are. I know that there was a different god in Egypt that was born by a virgin, have 12 followers, and then he died and rose. So I know that there are similarities with the Christianity claims.
Mhm.
Uh, well, I don't want to sound so spiritual. There have been uh, spiritual things that happened in my life that convinced me that Christianity is true. So even though I grew up in Christianity, there were times that I have been a skeptic, and I thought that Christianity is just a made-up thing. And I was living the life of sin, and I started getting convicted with my sin, and I know that I needed a savior. I needed someone
Wait,
who
if you were living without a belief in Christianity, then why did you think you were living? Why did you think sin was even a thing?
because we inherited sin from Adam, right? So
Say that
uh,
again. Say that again. I'm sorry. Say that again.
we basically we basically inherited sin, right?
You inherit sin. You only inherit
Yeah, because
the teaching is you only inherit original sin. You don't inherit just sin in
well,
general. So you
uh,
but so even that so even that you were non-practicing, you believed in original sin as an atheist before you were a Christian?
no. I was not an atheist. I was just saying that I thought like Christianity didn't like make sense to me, especially when I started reading
Yeah.
scripture. I was like,
Yeah.
could this be true? And but God like changed my heart. I have experienced Him. So when I did not even say I said, if you forgive me, I will serve you. Right? And God revealed to me by His Spirit. He
Okay.
baptized me with the Holy Spirit.
I
And
had an experience
I,
like that too.
so some of them are physical, where there was like a tongue in my ears, and I started speaking different languages.
Okay.
And
Could anyone understand any of those languages you spoke?
There were some interpreters.
No, I'm not talking about that. I mean, were any of them recognizable languages as being Spanish or Arabic or Japanese or Mandarin? Were any of them recognizable languages?
Well, there was no one who spoke Spanish. There was no one who spoke Arabic. We all spoke the same language. So we never recorded it, and we just went to the linguistic.
So how do you know it's not just gibberish?
All I know is in the same day we prayed for some people to die, and 7 people were dead. And that's
You prayed for people to die and they died?
yeah, like they were like witchcraft and stuff.
They were like what?
Witchcraft, you said.
Oh. And you want
Okay.
people to die?
Yeah, like
You sound like a horrible Christian. You want people to die and go to hell and be tortured. That's not a loving act.
That's not. No, like there are things that I'm not a violent person. I don't go out hurt people.
Okay.
Physically.
No, you just wish death upon them. What a wonderful person.
Emmanuel, I'm going to let you mull on that for a bit. So, or for tonight. And you hit, like I say, it's like so many different points here. There's a lot of different discussions to have. And I've got another caller I need to jump to. Can you call us back another time, please? Because I would like to go through some of these other things. Would that be okay? Can you call us back maybe next week or something?
That will be okay, but can I just clarify only one position?
Yeah. Go ahead.
So I'm not a violent person. Like right now, I see back my old self, and I sometimes laugh how I used to think. That day, I was just reading the Bible where Elijah prayed for someone to die, and God broke down fire.
Yeah. Well, let's just agree that wasn't a great. There are better thoughts than that to have in life. That's not a good way of living. So I appreciate you. You're a thoughtful person. So
okay.
So I appreciate the way you've thought through some of this stuff. There's, like I said, there's more to
one question before he goes.
Okay.
Do you think your prayer had any effect in causing that person's death?
Absolutely, because
then how can you say you're not a violent person if you caused the death of another person?
Because I have grown up from those thoughts, right? Now I don't pray for people to die.
Okay, got it. So now God taught you a better way.
I really want to get off this concept.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
So it is not a good. I don't care if you pray. If anybody prays, it is not a good idea to be praying for other people, for bad things to happen to other people. So let's just agree on that. And Emmanuel, call us back another time. Okay, we got more to talk about. Whoever's on, you can, because there's lots of different opinions and it would be interesting. Okay. So thank you so much for calling. We'll talk to you next time. Okay. Next up is Jimmy from Texas. He wants to get into Pascal's wager, and let's just let him tell us how he wants to do that. So Jimmy, welcome to the show. Thanks for waiting.
Yeah, thank you. Hey, Phil. Hey, Kelly, or Godless Granny, if you prefer. I just wanted to throw a twist on Pascal. Oh, sorry?
I just said hello.
I wanted to throw go ahead.
It's your turn. You go.
Okay.
Little delay.
Well, I wanted to throw a twist on Pascal's wager. Let's say, for hypothetically, that Pascal's wager applied to every religion, such that there was a transcendent divine reality from which all deities emanate from, whether it be, Zeus, Shakti, Ganesha, and so forth, Odin. And if you say, then if you didn't believe in one of these gods, then, of course, the consequences would occur. How then would you approach Pascal's wager?
Well, first off, you're essentially recognizing that if there are a possibility of, let's just say, 10 different gods, and of course there are thousands throughout history, and I don't know how many there are current day that people believe in, your odds of praying to any of them and believing in any of them are pretty bad, that you'll pick the right one. So, Pascal's wager, no matter what you bet, you're probably wrong.
No, that's what I'm getting at. Is let's say that all these deities throughout history, the thousands of them or whatever, all emanate from one source, from one metaphysical source. And so,
okay, so you're saying, suppose that all of the gods are really one God.
Okay. Well, and if you're going to go that route, then okay. I suppose there's more validity to that concept. I would argue that there is insufficient reason to think that's true. Certainly, if you would ask Christianity and Islam, again, particularly, that they don't believe themselves to be of the same God as whatever other religion they believe theirs is an exclusive God. I do want to take you to a different piece of Pascal's wager, but Kelly, go ahead. So what were you going to say?
I would say that if the God is whatever, then belief in God obviously is not important to this God, because this God allows you to believe in him or not believe in him through whatever path. To me, this sounds like universalism. All paths lead to God. And since what you believe doesn't matter to this God, I would imagine that unbelief also would not matter as well.
Well, the way I would counter that is that, let's say they were all born from this metaphysical, divine, transcendent reality, and that's ultimately what they cling to, or what they what they all represent in a sense. And so, as long as it didn't matter which path you took or which deity you believed in, you were ultimately believing for what they stood for, which is that one metaphysical source. Then
I'm going to agree with you, Jamie, in the sense that if they all come from the same, I would think that then the differentiation would be those who disbelieve would be on the wrong side of the argument, or those who believe in something that's just completely different, like the tree god or something like that. So I don't buy your argument, but I if it were true, hypothetically, okay, I guess that makes sense. I want to take you back though, because the thing about Pascal's wager that always falls aside for me is how do you define Pascal's wager? Is it that you might as well believe, because if you're wrong, the consequences are going to be hugely negative? Is that essentially what you mean by it?
Well, no, I wanted to take it back to the kind of the topic of the show, morality. That believing in some type of deity will, in a way, dictate the person's behavior. And I know there are some of the religious extremists out there that do really harmful things, but that's not necessarily what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the average theist who does abide by, let's say, the Golden Rule or the 10 Commandments, and they try to live a righteous life to the best of degree that they can. Wouldn't that, for every person and for every religion, cater towards that?
Well, what I'm getting to is that, do you consider belief to be something you choose to do?
Belief in something you choose to do. Can you elaborate?
Is belief a choice, or is it a conclusion of, we're basically trying to figure out, is this true? Does God exist? And let's put the religion issue aside for a second. So it doesn't matter what religion. Let's just say all religions point to the same one God. Okay. So the first question that has to be answered is, does this God exist? And do you believe in this God just because you say, I believe, I choose to believe? or does belief happen in another way?
I see what you're saying. Well, I guess that's, I would think of it as maybe a different topic than morality from God. Now you're saying, how do you discern whether God is real? For me, I was once an atheist.
No, that's not what I'm saying. And I'm not trying to sidetrack you, because I think the problem with Pascal's wager is that there's an assumption early on that people just jump right over, and then they go on with the heaven or hell kind of a thing. So I want to deal with that assumption. How do you believe that it is your choice to believe or not? Is belief a thing you just say, I'm going to believe and now I believe? Or is it something that you look around you think about, you look at evidence, you look at arguments, and then you make a conclusion based on everything you've investigated that yes, this is true, or no, this is not true?
Well, I mean, I would say that dependent on the individual. Some people believe based on evidence, some people believe based on indoctrination, some people believe for various things. I don't think it always comes down to a choice.
Okay, I would agree with you. I would agree with you there. I think you're right. I think you're right there. So if it's not a choice, then Pascal's wager goes away. That's the problem I have with Pascal's wager, because people always say you might as well choose to believe. Well, to me, that's like saying, I can believe I have 3 fingers when the evidence is clearly otherwise. And so it doesn't matter whether or not I go with Pascal's wager and say I might as well believe I have 3, because if I have 3, then people will give me more candy, or whatever the positive thing is that results from one position versus the other. So the fact that we really can't choose, that we really come to decisions based on evaluation, tells me that Pascal's wager, all you can do essentially is believe or not believe based on your evidence, your logic, and everything else, or you can pretend to believe and hope it pays off.
Yes, that's why I wanted to see how you would address the hypothetical. It's just a hypothetical. I know, in Pascal's wager, someone might reason and not their way into saying, I don't want to surface the consequence. Obviously, I'm going to go with the Pascal's wager and believe. So it wasn't it was a conclusion based on reasoning. But
that's not reasoning. That's not reason. That's a threat. That's a threat.
I just wanted to stress the hypothetical to all religions. Of course, if it's all religions, then it's not necessarily a choice anymore.
Well, I'm giving you the all religions point. I'm saying if all religions go to one God, okay, I'm giving you that hypothetical. I'm going with the hypothetical. So it doesn't matter what religion, if you choose, or you end up with, I should say, if they all have the same God behind it. It doesn't matter. So hypothetically, I'll give you that point. But I'm saying you can't even get there, because if you use your intellectual mind and just say, I decide, I come to the conclusion that there is a God, then there's no Pascal's wager. There's no choosing because I'm trying to avoid a shakedown, basically. Right? You choose for other reasons, right? You choose. I gotta be careful with my words, because that's not what I mean. You decide for other reasons. You decide that your God exists or not exists because of what you think, because of the logic that you use, because of the evidence, because of what you've been taught. So there's no. So it doesn't matter the consequences. You decide based on all that stuff. So it's nice if you truly believe that in this book that says you're going to go to hell if you don't believe. It turns out, and then you actually do believe for all those other legitimate reasons. Well, then you feel like you've made the right decision. You may be incorrect, but at least you've come to it honestly. But I don't see how you go to the position of choosing to avoid hell other than a purely selfish decision to not, to try to avoid punishment. Does that make sense?
Well, I mean, yeah, no, it does. I would think that it would encompass more than just avoiding hell. Choosing to follow the doctrine and the religion would also, shape your ethics and behavior and things like that throughout your life. Aside from just saving you in the end.
Wouldn't you need a reason for it to be true before you can do that?
Well, I know. Well, I mean, it was just a hypothetical. Inside the hypothetical, the consequences would be dire, of course. But other reasons for it to be true, I would think going deeper topics into philosophy, theology, and things like that.
I'm okay with what you're saying. I just think you've made a misplacement of where your logic is. It's not in the Pascal's wager.
Do you see belief as being a choice of free will?
Well, I myself personally am a compatibilist. So, I don't see free will as incompatible with determinism. And so you could argue that it's free will, but I think that's just a matter of semantics.
Give us a definition of compatibilism, if you will, for some of us who aren't huge on philosophy. What's your definition of compatibilism?
The notion that free will is compatible with determinism, that ultimately, let's say, even if everything was, predestined, that free will and predestination are occurring simultaneously. And for some people, that might sound contradictory.
Okay. But is your belief in God a free will choice of yours?
I don't have any issue calling it either, a choice of free will or something that was destined to happen.
Okay. If it was a free will choice, okay, first, can a person make a free will choice while they are under duress?
Under duress, you said?
Yeah, if someone's holding a gun to your head and says, "Give me your money or I will shoot you," can you make a free will choice to give them your money, or are you giving them your money because if you don't, they're going to shoot you?
Yes, I still think you have free will at that moment. I mean, it depends on how much you value your life. You may not care about dying.
Okay, I'll grant you that. But if the gun was not to your head and the person just came up and said, "Give me all your money," would you still give them all your money?
If I wanted to continue to survive, yes.
No. I changed the scenario. A person walks up to you. They have no gun. There is no threat to you whatsoever. Just a random person just walks up to you on the street and says, "Give me all your money, please." Would you give it to them?
Well, I usually don't carry much anyway.
Well, come on, don't avoid the question. Let's assume you've got payday. You got $100 in your pocket, so.
Yep.
Okay, let's say no.
Okay. So giving the person the money isn't because you want to give them the money. It's because they're threatening you if you don't, correct?
Sure.
Okay. So then it is not a choice of free will. It is a choice under duress. Okay. So you got that?
Coerced.
Right. So if you are given a choice, believe in God or you will go to hell for eternity, how is that a choice of free will and not a choice under duress?
Okay, I see. No, it definitely sounds like it could be coercion.
It is.
Mhm.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. Yeah, you're struggling with it because it makes sense and it's counter to what you already knew. But you're right. It's it is a threat. It's not a free decision then. Yeah. So that demonstrates. I'm trying to wrap up here. Well, no, actually, no, we're not. We got a little time. That demonstrates that the choice that you're even putting forth in Pascal's wager is not even a good choice anyways. It's not a free choice. So number one, you can't choose to believe, and number two, if you go one way or the other, it's really for selfish reasons or to prevent being shaken down and being harmed. It is under coercion.
Yeah.
God loves you
I don't
unless you don't believe him, and then you get to go and burn in hell forever.
Yeah, the way I imagine a theist might see, or theologian, might see it is, not necessarily that, it's a form of coercion. It's part of the nature of reality. It may seem like coercion to someone on the outside examining it, but let's say hell.
Jimmy, you're right, and the thing is, you're right. They would see it that way, and they'd be wrong.
Well, how would they be wrong if that's how they interpret it?
You can interpret something wrong all the time. Someone is listen to the words again. Believe in me. I love you, which is weird. Believe in me. If you don't believe in me, I will torture you forever.
Well, I'll give you another example.
No, don't go away. Don't run away from this. Isn't that's straight up coercion? If you interpret this a different way, you're doing something wrong with the logic. Don't you?
I disagree. I think we just see the logic in a different way.
Okay. Explain how the logic is wrong.
Let's say you're standing at the edge of a volcano. Would you decide to dive in, or are you going to make your way off of it?
If I'm standing on the edge of a volcano and the guy next to me says, "Love me forever, or I will push you into the volcano," I'm going to say, "You're my best friend." Right? Wouldn't you?
Yeah, sure, but
do you see the coercion? And if he wasn't there and I was on the edge of the volcano by myself, I would enjoy the view of the volcano and then eventually just walk away safely.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't have to be somebody's friend. So again, where's the false? I'm sorry, I'm over talking you. So go ahead and make your point.
Okay, no, I'm saying that, but the reality is the volcano is there, the molten lava is there. It would perish you if you decided to dive in, and there's no escaping that reality. And I suppose the theologian sees it that way. They don't see it as a form of coercion. It's just part of the nature of reality.
Okay,
the coercion is the guy next to you saying, "Love me, or I will push you in."
Let me see if I can clarify this a bit. From Jimmy's analogy, you're standing at the edge of the volcano and you are going to fall in anyway unless the guy next to you saves you. And the guy next to you is a loving person. And he says, if you promise to love me forever, then I will take you away from the volcano. But if you don't promise to love me forever, I'm just going to leave you there to fall in. Is that a loving God?
Yeah, that's more accurate. I love that. That's definitely more accurate to what I think the theologian expresses with damnation.
Okay, so you don't think that God actually condemns anyone, correct? You think people are born condemned already?
No, I don't think they're necessarily born condemned already. I think that's why people could, turn away from sin and change their lives and so forth in the midst of their lives. They don't have to remain sinful.
What if they don't ever sin?
Well, then there's no reason to be saved because they've already, they're on the right path from the get-go.
Well,
So
that's
we
good.
don't
That's
need
good for the
salvation. Only
atheists.
some people need salvation.
Well, some people who are led astray. We all know them, the drug addicts, the people who steal, the people who are in prison right now, so on and so forth.
So someone like me, I don't need salvation. I'm not a drug addict.
I don't think you do. You seem like a very generous and nice person, and very respectful, despite your disbelief in God. But there is certain views on how you would approach death in that aspect.
So hell isn't for those who don't believe. Hell is for those who sin, or those who are bad people.
Well, I think the nature of hell is a very interesting topic. I mean, there's different, views within Christianity itself. I don't know if you heard of Valentinianism. He's had this criteria where, the mystics and saints, obviously they're on a righteous path, so they're completely saved. And then there's others who, are semi-spiritual. They may go to church on Sunday, but other than that, they consider, they do white lies, stuff like that. And they might suffer a partial consequence. And then there's ones that are just totally adherent to material reality. And when they meet death, their death will be uncertain. Like he wasn't sure to how hell would address them. And so that's why I think it's interesting, because there's so many interpretations of hell. Some theologians even thought of the Tabor light, or the light of God, as seen at the moment prior to death. For the sinner, the same white light of God is actually interpreted as the flames of hell for the sinner, even though it's the same divine light that the saint sees when he dies. So I don't know. It's a very interesting topic.
So you don't think that there will be a judgment at the end of time? God doesn't judge people.
No, I think when you approach death, there will be a type of judgment based on how you lived your life.
Well, if God is doing the judging, then God is the one that's sending them to hell.
Sure, but I don't think of it as this black and white place that many people portray it as.
Well, what that does is that changes your analogy. Your analogy was the person is standing at the volcano next to you, offering to save you. But if God is the one that is sending you to hell, then God's not saving you from an inevitable fall into the volcano. God is the one that is actively pushing you into the volcano.
Yeah, sure. The volcano analogy is probably not the best, but I mean, it got closer to what I was trying to say.
No, let's be careful. Let's be careful here, because when you run away from an analogy, you might be running away because you don't like the outcome. So let's stay with this analogy until if you see a flaw in the analogy, then go ahead.
I think there could be better analogies.
Give me 1 second. Give me 1 second. Jimmy, 1 second. If you see a flaw in the analogy, then point it out and explain why you think it's a flaw. But don't run away and say I'm going to switch the topic or move the goalposts, kind of a thing.
Sure. Okay. Well, if there is a flaw, I think it gives the impression of it being black and white. That's all. And I think there's a gray area that a lot of theologians address that aren't really addressed in that analogy.
Seems pretty clear to me. I mean, seriously, if the guy's gonna push you in if you don't love him or you don't pay him off, or then that's a pretty stark condition. I mean, that is our proposed hypothetical, which is the analogy to God saying love me or you go to hell. So you can explain why do you think that analogy doesn't fit, but because going to hell versus not going to hell, that seems pretty black and white. Believing versus not believing seems pretty black and white. When we've already determined that you cannot choose to believe and actually believe. You can pretend to believe to try to fake out this God who's threatening you. You could believe and just be lucky that you made the right choice, and if that God does exist. Or you can disbelieve, and of course you'll be fine because it doesn't matter. There is no God pushing you to hell. There's no hell.
No, yes. But I also think it is a complex, it's a more complex topic than people make it out to be. Sometimes it's not as simplistic. I study comparative religion as a hobby, and if you look into Valentinian Gnosticism or something like that, or even the Eastern Orthodox Christianity, there's very different nuances to hell than you would find in this kind of black and white scenario.
Okay. So I'm going to try this one more time because we're running down on time. So let's get rid of the analogy and just go straight back to the God and hell thing. So if you don't believe in God, you go to hell. That's what the Bible says. I believe that's what the Quran says. How can that be correct if you can't choose? If making a belief choice is not a thing?
I don't think you'll necessarily go to hell. Like some theologians thought that the people who adhered to solely the material reality would have an uncertain death, and maybe.
So you're changing the rules now. So you're changing the rules of basically a.
They're not my rules. They're not my rules.
No, the rules are you go to hell, or if you don't believe, that's it. That's not the analogy. That's the rule. So you're backing away from that by saying you don't think that's true. That might not be true because there's some subtlety to it. Is that because you're not interested or willing to shift your position, or you're trying to find a way out?
I would say that you're changing the rules. No, that's not my position. Now, I don't adhere to those particular rules. That's not what I've studied.
But that's Pascal's wager that you came to defend.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, my hypothetical was a little different from what Pascal's wager presented, in its original context.
I would love to go further with this, but we're at 2 hours. Because I if that's what you're stating, I don't want to put words in your mouth. So I appreciate you making that statement that you think I'm misrepresenting your words, and I don't want to do that. I want to understand what you're trying to say. Can you do that in 5 minutes, or do you want to call back next time and try that? Do you want to explain?
No, I really appreciate discussion. I really like the points both of you guys made. I call it there, and maybe I could call back next time with something else. But I'll be a little bit
back with this too. You can call back with this too. So.
But thank you guys.
Okay,
You're welcome.
Call us again.
It was good talking to you.
Thank you so much. That was it. That was interesting, and that was fun. So that is Jimmy. Gosh, this is, it's hard to do a short call because I'm interested in getting to the core of why people make the points they make, and sometimes you do have to repeat back and make sure you're getting it, that we're getting it, what they're saying, and we're not twisting their words and stuff. And this all takes time. So I don't know. I think we may have gotten a couple of points to him, but at the very least, this was a conversation. I think that we were both listening. Both sides were listening, and I think that's valuable.
I agree.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to wrap it up. Anything else, Kelly, you want to say before I go to our...
No, I think we covered pretty much
outros?
everything we intended to cover.
Yeah, I enjoyed this one. Let's talk on the private chat real quick. Wes, put up you got it, the patrons. I want to say thank you to our patrons. If you have not considered becoming a Skeptic Haven patron, please do so. We've got all the various levels. You see me drinking out of I love this cup because I love the blue in it and everything. This is a 15-ounce mug, so coffee is great in it. Tea is great in it. It's not just a little cheapy thing. $10 a month support for this one. Our current patrons, Sidney Davis Jr., Eric Ozels, Tara S., Ryan, Deneen Murphy, Dan D., and Michael Weisman, Kathy Compton, Cindy Plaza, Sunny Shell, Aaron Colson, some guy named Phil, and Jamie West. And please check out our other Skeptic Haven shows. This is our Sunday show. We have Secular Soapbox on Wednesday at 5:00 Pacific. We have the Sunny Spot, which is largely our science topic show. Not always, but if we do science, that's where you're going to find it. And that's on Thursday at 5 Pacific. And then Saturday, we have two shows. We have the Global Atheists, which is 11 o'clock in the morning for Pacific, but we do that specifically so that it's 2 p.m. on East Coast, but it's 6 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time. So we want that to be in a time zone that's good for that audience. And you're going to see faces there that you don't see on all these other shows, and that's intentional. And what am I missing? Women Atheists Unload also on Sunday. That's a wonderful group, and it's actually just gotten a little bit bigger too, because Alma just joined us. If you know Alma from her work with Teo, she's wonderful too. So please check out all those shows and come back for Let's Talk on Sunday. Tell your friends, connect up with us on Threads, and thank you so much, all. See you next time.
This is Skeptic Haven. Let's talk.